Hello and
Hello.
good morning. Welcome to another show of Build on Open Source, the show where we take you through all the latest open source news and projects. I'm joined by my lovely host, Derek. Derek, hello.
Lovely. Thanks, Ricardo. What a lovely introduction. And happy St. Patrick's Day to you, sir.
And happy St. Patrick's Day to you too. In case people were wondering why we have this fine greenery and this lovely bonnet. Where's your bonnet, Derek, actually?
Well, actually, I couldn't find a bonnet that would fit my very large head. So I have a beautiful green hoodie on today for the show. And I have an excellent green lightsaber.
Yes. Oh, that is a thing of beauty. What happens when you wobble it? Does it make a noise?
Oh, it sure does.
Oh, smoosh it against your hand. Smoosh it against your hand.
That's a good, yeah.
I have one as well. Mine isn't as poised as yours.
Yes, yes. It, as I said during the week, needs a bit of work. It needs a bit of work.
It needs a bit of work. But so welcome everyone. And what have we got lined up this week, Derek? What's coming up?
Well, Ricardo, for those of us out there, if you haven't seen the show before, what we do in Build on Open Source is we talk about all of the open source projects that have been highlighted in Ricardo's blog over the last 2 weeks since our last show.
Indeed.
And we also talk to a very special guest. So this week we have John Mille, who is the creator of ECS Compose X, which is a very cool piece of software. And stick around for that because that is going to be very insightful. And as always, John will get deep dive. We'll see some demos, and we will get as nerdy as we possibly can.
Absolutely,
because that's who we are.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. And also one thing, John is an AWS community builder as well. So props to all the AWS community builders out there who might be watching as well. If you want to know more about the program, we'll share some links as well. But so I think, Derek, I think we should dive maybe straight into the first segment of the show.
Should we go with news of the week? I'm going to do something different this week, Rick. So we're always interested to see where our viewers are from, because I'm from Perth in Western Australia, even with this accent. And Rick, you're in London. You're in the UK and London, in England, not in London. So where's everybody else watching and listening from? We'd really like to find out. Just put in the chat.
And also, if you've got any Irish connections, tell us about your Irish connections at St. Patrick's Day. Let's celebrate everything Irish, right? I've got my my Dublin Open Source Summit t-shirt on, which is a thing of beauty, green, of course. But tell us if you've got a connection with Ireland. Let us know what that is. Tell us where you're coming from. This show also is super interactive. We want to hear your questions later on. Also, tell us what projects you want us to feature, okay, in maybe up and coming episodes. So yes, please, let's have your feedback.
And extra points if you've already opened the Guinness today. Okay,
that's going to be a bit controversial for us folks in the UK, Derek. I mean, that's okay for you folks who know it's going home time now, but not for us.
It is. No, it's always Guinness time. Anyway, step it into the first segment. All right, so news of the week. Don't sing along to the tune, please, Rick.
Okay, sorry. I just can't help it. It's one of those tunes it's already now in my brain.
It's very catchy indeed. So am I first or are you first this week?
I tell you what, I think I will go first, and then I'll hand it over to you. Okay. So I'm going to be covering the new projects that are going to be released on the next newsletter, which is being published on Monday. So make sure you check out socials for the link for the newsletter on Monday. But there's two kind of projects I want to cover, really. The first one, actually, the first one is a group of projects. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share my screen, Derek, or whether you'll do that.
I will. Let me do that for you.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Exactly.
There you are.
Okay. Cool. So the first group of projects I want to talk about. Yes. Exactly. I forgot the bell though. There you go.
Yes. Derek, wake up.
Yeah.
Do something.
This is my remote control Derek bell. So look, it's very another. It's not quite as shiny as my Shamrock, which I'm hopefully blinding a few people with the the beautiful greenness there.
Ooh.
Yes. So the first actually is a bunch of projects to do with S3. Now, some of you might have seen the announcements on socials, but there's a project called Mount Point S3. What this allows you to do is actually allows you to mount an S3 bucket, which obviously is object store, as a file system within Linux, which, you know, interesting. Whoops. I knew that was I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen, but stay on target. Stay on target.
Yes.
So this allows you to effectively on Linux at the moment mount a S3 as a file system, and of course I have got a demo for you. Okay. Ooh. So at the moment you have to download the code, compile its Rust, and then that effectively creates an executable. You then effectively create a directory that you want to mount, and I've already got the command in my hopefully in my history.
Up.
Am I the only person that does this rather than remember the command?
Yeah, I do it. Yep.
Right.
Nice.
So I've got a S3 bucket called this. I want to basically link it to this mount point. Click on that, and hopefully, with the demo gods are good with us. If I now go into my directory, we should be able to see. Look at that, all my files. But cool. Okay, so that's it. That's it working. But I want to make sure that we're clear that that might not necessarily be the right way of using it, right? So even though you can do that, I think there's it's worth reading the blog post, because there are specific use cases where this has been designed for. Okay, and it's not necessarily designed to be to use S3 as a file system like I've just shown you, right? So even though I think it's an easy way to demo, but it's not necessarily how you would actually use it. So make sure you read the blog post for their suggested use cases. So that's the first project, Derek. Then there's two other S3 related projects. Okay, so the first, and they're kind of related, and what they're effectively there to help you with is if you're working with large numbers of files. Okay, copying them individually either through the GUI or through the CLI requires a lot of activity, lot of API calls to do those objects, right? So what this tool allows, yeah, exactly. So what these projects are doing is they're kind of smooshing them together.
Smooshing them together.
That's the word of the day, folks. Smooshing.
Well played, sir.
Yes, exactly. I thought you'd like that, Derek. So they're smooshing them together and then uploading them, and then they kind of interact with the actual get object API, which then actually behind the scenes is then calling a Lambda function to actually then extract the files individually. So it's a really nice way if you're working with lots of files but want to help optimize, you know, the calls you're making. Then that's S3 Access, and also then the other one is the S3 Turtle. Okay, so you know, really good if you're working with lots of files. Check these open source tools out because they may help you streamline and simplify some of the stuff that you're doing.
It was obviously an S3 week everywhere. That's
it is
excellent. S3.
I think you can expect more.
Yeah,
I think you can expect more goodness from that team. They're really diving deep on open source at the moment. So yeah, good stuff. We love that. Right. Now the second project I want to talk about is a really great, and I'm not sure if people have seen this, but one of our colleagues in the serverless team who creates amazing open source projects. We featured projects in his newsletter before, David Boyne. He's created this really cool project. He's got 2 young kids, and sort of like what he's created is a tool that automatically generates every day a bedtime story using ChatGPT. Okay. Yeah. Now that's cool in itself, right? Because the stories are personalized to his children. But he went beyond that. What he's done is also he's integrated with DALL-E to create a nice picture for the story. And then he's also integrated with some of the AWS services to then create effectively an MP3 audio. So it actually reads the story as well. And it's all serverless. It's all, you know, kind of like orchestrated through some of the serverless services. And he shared the source code. And there's an example of what one of the stories looks like. Okay, I think this is friggin' amazing.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
It is cool, isn't it?
There's been a number of projects that do the same. So what ChatGPT is really created is this this sort of cottage industry where people are creating bedtime story applications. Yeah, and in the Perth user group last week, we had a local talk about his project, which is called bedtimestory.ai. But what I think what David's done really well is he's architected in serverless, and he has created the source code so everybody can have a go, and that's very cool. David, probably I'm surprised he actually has 2 kids to spend the time.
Where does he find the time? David, where do you find the time? Tell us, please. But so actually, if you're listening, then kind of like if you're using ChatGPT in the chat, please let us know what you're using it for. Hey, Adrian. Hey, happy St. Patrick's to you too. Good to see you on the stream, man.
Yeah, hope you like Ricardo's hat.
So, Derek, those are my 2 projects.
They're excellent.
What would you like to share with from last week's?
Yeah, so I probably have 3. I'm going to cheat again. I cheated last week, so I'm going to cheat again. I do apologize. So let's just bring up my screen.
You see, I'm not touching the.
I know.
Buttons, Derek.
Yeah,
I'm
just
not touching
buttons. For everybody watching, Ricardo lost his button pushing privileges a few weeks ago, and he's yet to get them back. So the first, so this is the blog. So this is not. So what we've seen was Ricardo's pre-released, unreleased blog from this week. So this is the blog before that, and so March the 13th. So the first thing.
What have you done to the font? What have you? Your font is different, or your typeface.
Hold on, I probably want to do. Yeah.
No, it's like I like it. I prefer it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's like it just took me by surprise.
It's elite. It's elite font.
Okay. Nice.
So the first thing is OSS. So .NET FOSS is everybody calls it. So I'm a bit of a .NET developer, as you know, Rick.
Yes, I do.
And what the .NET team in AWS have been doing is they've been putting forward money to open source projects that run on .NET as a way of encouraging that community, which is an awesome thing to do. And so it was running last year, and every .NET project that was selected got, was it 5,000 USD. And it was so successful that they're doing it again this year. So in 2023, what they're doing is every month picking up a .NET project, which is voted for by the committee. I just want to get the rogues gallery of the committee. So this is the .NET AWS team, very key members of it anyway, not all of them. So they're selecting their favorite projects, and then you can see past recipients for this year, cool. And then also last year. So this is a great way of supporting open source community, and Rick, as we know, we like that. We like people supporting open source.
if you have your favorite .NET project, then let them know about this and see if they might get some spawns, right? Some cash.
Yes. Hey, you never know. You never know. So that I'm going to start with that one. That is probably
a strong start, Derek. It's a strong start.
Oh, thank you. Hat tip. So the next one I'm going to show is actually this one. I don't know. Doing this show, Rick, there's a lot of stories that go on, and this one is another one. So this project is called Static Website CLI. So when I started looking at this,
what does it do?
Yes, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It creates you a static website in AWS, so S3 behind CloudFront, but it uses Rust, right? So it's a very
shiny
nice way of using Rust. So we're Rust is a bit of a theme of the current the current times.
It's hot programming language, isn't it? It's I think most loved or most people most preferred.
Yeah, most questions on Stack Overflow at the minute or something. There was a stat I saw recently that was very cool. So static CLI for AWS. I just click into it You can't see it. So I really wanted to play with this, but I didn't have a domain zone set up in my CloudFront. So, and I didn't have any domain set up. So I didn't have time to fully. I know. I was like, it was 2 hours before the show started. I was like, oh.
Yes.
So, apologies.
So you're not one of these people that've got hundreds of domains then, just basically sort of lying around, not waiting to do something. You did.
I actually did. They all expired. The last one expired in January, believe it or not.
Okay, good man. You didn't renew then.
Yeah. Well, there's a financial squeeze going on at the
minute. those domain registrars are feeling it hard, man.
Yes, indeed.
Where's all that money from Derek coming? We've lost it all.
GoDaddy, watch out. Anyway, we digress. So yes, the author. So I was doing some research on this project as it seemed to do, get lost and go down rabbit holes. So the author of this project is one Scott Gehring. So Scott actually works for AWS in Germany, and it turns out I know Scott. So Scott comes from Perth, and
no way.
We worked together way back in the dim and dark future past. So I reached out to Scott and asked him, did he have a demo? Because I'm running to a bit of a schedule, and he said no, but we're going to work together and see if we can get a demo.
That's so cool.
Demo for this because he's coming to Australia next week. So there you go. There's a good little story around static website CLI. So pretty easy to use. It's basically one command as long as you have the domain set up. So you point it at that domain zone, and you give it obviously a package, so your static assets, and it will do the rest. So nice, very nice, and written in Rust. And then finally, sorry that I did go on the story. The coolest one that I come across it's called I Am Ape. So there's 2 cool things about I Am Ape. So I Am Ape, and it's in the newsletter. So it's down. Yes, I Am Ape. So it's what it is. So I Am, as we know, is a fantastic way of defining fine-grained access control in your AWS account. All right. But what happens? You have many resources with different IAM policies because you want to define least privilege for everything. So you inevitably get yourself in a bit of a mess. So what IAM Ape is there to do is try and simplify that by actually telling you what policies are applied to what resources, which is very cool. But the best thing is it actually has an excellent overview of why you should use it. So again, I'm going to actually put this in the chat. Last week, I pointed out another open source project that had excellent documentation and also described the problem. And IAM Ape is another one like that. So I did create a short demo for this, but I'm just conscious of time. So what you do is for I Am Ape is you simply, it's a Python to install it as a Python, and then you give it an ARN. So you give it the ARN that you're looking at, and it will. As an
ARN of what? Is it an ARN policy or role or?
Anything. So it could be a policy, it could be a role. The documentation is there, so it's nice. Again, this is the actual documentation on the site, so it's nice, and you can actually give it a policy or a role. And I have it right in front of me. Hold on, this is ridiculous. Okay, cool. I should get my.
Whilst you're finding that, I got to say that I also was. I'm very keen on the logo. Right, I thought the logo was awesome. Yes. I'm a big Gorillas fan. And it gave me Gorillas vibes, So it's always good when these projects have cool names and cool logos, as well as great documentation. All in all,
so it is very cool. And where is my screen?
Yes, I'm not touching it. Do you want to bring it in? Should I bring it in?
Oh. There we go. Got it. I was playing with this, and what I should not do is sure.
It's running. It's running.
So
doing something.
Was I am ape. So what you do, I don't want to really share any of my credentials and stuff like that, so I won't run through it. But what you do, yeah, I know. Sorry,
Such a spoil sport.
You pass it a profile. yes. Even in St. Patrick's Day, I'm a sport. So you pass it a profile, and then you give it an ARN. So the ARN can be anything. So user, a group, or a role, which you want to evaluate the permissions on. So that's super handy tool, well documented, super easy to set up.
Like it.
Well worth
thumbs up from us.
Out. Yeah, double thumbs up.
Yep.
I am ape.
We like that.
Very handy.
Very nice security. Thank you. Okay. I think that's a great roundup. I think we've chosen some great projects there. Let us know what you think in the chat. Do you think these are interesting? Will you use them? Are there projects that you would have liked to seen us share that we haven't put in? Just let us know, please. So, Derek, I think we're ready to bring on our guest.
We are, Rick. I'm just thinking we didn't have a project with any ASCII art. So if you're in a project maintainer, and you've got some awesome
I don't
ASCII
know.
art.
That I would say that the command line you had there had "I am ape" in ASCII kind of art, kind of ish. I think we can give it half a credit. But anyway, coming up next is our guest, John Mille, AWS community builder, who's going to be talking to us about his project, ECS Compose X. It's awesome, so make sure you stick around.
Okay.
Hey! Happy St. Patrick's Day, John.
Thank you, and to you too. As you can see, I didn't have very nice and green T-shirts to bring, so I just got this one on purpose. And as far as the relationships to Ireland, my wife's Irish, so there you go.
Yeah, there's always a connection. There's always a connection, John.
There's always my wife is Irish as well. In fact, actually, I was there last week speaking, and I learned a new phrase. Okay, they call it the island of Ireland to try and create a unified vibe. It's awesome. I thought I'd never heard of it before. So that was my takeaway from last week when I was in Belfast.
Yeah, the island
of Ireland. Yeah, exactly. It's great. Anyway, John. Hello.
Hey.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is John Mille. That's my legal name. There you go. But you'll see me around and online on GitHub and all of those things as John Preston. That's a nickname I've had since I was about 12 years old, something like that. So it just stuck around as an ex-gamer. I mean, I still play games, but but yeah.
Why Preston, John? Why Preston? We found this out yesterday. Please, you got to share this. This is the cool thing.
Right. So John Preston is a character in the movie called Equilibrium, where it's a bit of a dystopian movie where basically there was a Third World War. And the only way to do crowd control was to give people a pill called prosium, where basically people stop having feelings. So you basically transform people into machines at this point. So I'm not going to say anything else in case people haven't watched the movie. It's a little old. I mean, I think it was.
It's a great movie.
It's a great
movie. Christian Bale is absolutely on point in that film.
Absolutely, yes.
On fleek.
Yeah, that's where the John Preston comes from. Now, it seems like we have a bit of a Star Wars thing going on today for things. So I did bring my lightsaber.
Wow. We're all getting our lightsabers out.
I know, right? There you go.
Where's yours, Derek?
Nice. Sorry, I put mine down.
Yes, that's it.
There you go.
Right, that's it.
I mean, the level of nerdness in this show always makes me smile and laugh.
I think only we could combine Star Wars with St. Patrick's, right? I think that's the thing.
It's the perfect combination. Why did nobody think of this before?
Well, the thing is, I guess if you look at it this way, right? St. Patrick's probably had like a staff from like a shepherd. So we just evolved to a different kind of tool.
I like it.
Really.
The force is strong with you, John. The force is strong with you.
We'll see about that.
But anyway, stay on target. Stay on target. Tell us.
So thanks for having me on the show to talk about ECS Compose X. In a nutshell, ECS Compose X.
What are you going to be talking about? So tell us what you're going to be what you're going to be showing, and also tell us before we see the code, right? We want to find out more about the problem space. So what made you? We like to talk about the itch, right? The developers have the itch, exactly. Yeah. Now, what made you suddenly think I've got to do something, right? So talk a little bit about that, before we dive in and look more closely at the actual project you created.
Yeah, absolutely. So ECS ComposeX is a tool that transforms basically Docker Compose files into CloudFormation templates to allow you to deploy all of your services on ECS. And the Compose X, the X in the name comes from the fact that Docker Compose has this ability to have extension fields. So this is what I'm going to be leveraging, and we'll be showing that in the demo. As to the why I created it, so I used to work in a company where they had done a fairly good job of doing a lot of CI/CD for something like 70-something services, and everything was everything at the end of the CI/CD for each of the services. Everything was compiled into one giant Docker Compose file. And that allowed people to test things on their laptops because there was a lot of integration between services. Mesh wasn't quite a thing at the time. It was very early days for meshes. So to be able to mock API calls across 75 different microservices, that was difficult. And they had a terrible security practice. So when I say terrible, it was really all the things you can think of, all the things you shouldn't be doing. They did probably about all of them. Right. So started to build a tool basically to allow the developers to be able to keep working with the Docker Compose files on their laptops because that was obviously extremely important for them, and being able to create an entire ephemeral environment, completely brand new, where they could basically plug everything in from their laptop all the way to the cloud, where the other services that they weren't responsible for could be deployed, and do all of the local testing that they had to do with the real thing. And then at the end of the day, they had a really good end-to-end test that could run across the entire platform. So that's kind of how the project was kind of born. At the time, it wasn't the project as it is today, because the company then changed manager, and they said, no, we're going to get rid of all of that and bring in Terraform and Kubernetes instead. So the project got killed. And before joining my next company onwards, I decided, well, I'm just going to rewrite it because I think that the value is here. I really like the work that it's making me do, because it also made me learn so much about writing code, testing code, and Python and all of that. So I was very passionate about it. And ECS CLI version 1 was on the way out. So and there wasn't any indication at the time that a replacement would come for people to be able to take their Compose files and deploy to ECS. That obviously, so ComposeX literally celebrated its third year last week. Sorry. Yep. Beep, beep, beep. And fun fact, I released it literally the next day after getting married. So
no way.
Yes, the reason for it is I wanted to be sure it was going to be fully open source, and so I published it, and was the very short window I had between two different employers. So there you go. That's how I made sure I could. It was out and on time.
That's great.
Nice. Love it.
So here are some of the details. Here's some of the stories, and it's grown quite a lot over the years. Mostly out of go and find more use cases. Add more and more features to it. And I think the best compliment I've received so far about the project is probably from Nathan at Peck, where I think he mentioned, he said, we discussed about it about 2 weeks ago, and he said, well, I remember the project. I kind of saw it when you and I recorded the blog post about it 3 years ago. And the other day he said, well, it went from something that looked like somebody wrote for himself to solve a problem for his own problems, and then it's grown into a fully fledged feature project. And this is the sort of thing that would not happen without the support of the community, without the support of AWS as well, to help with open source credits. So if you're writing open source, again, not to yes, but just like the .NET funds you were just talking about, Derek, there's an open source program as well where people contributing to open source can ask for credits with AWS, which is somewhat something that people don't really know about. So yeah. I just thought I would mention it as well, because it was of amazing support to be able to not have to pay out of my own pocket to deploy databases and all sorts of for all the sort of resources that ComposeX supports.
That's a great point, Joe. We should probably mention that every week, Rick. Just thinking.
We should.
Anyway, John, that's a good overview. We've understood the scratch, the itch. How about, can we jump into some code or
absolutely.
Some demos?
So, what are you going to show us? Yeah, before you jump into it, what are you going to show everyone today?
While you're talking to Rick, John, could you share your screen because I'm not seeing it at the minute?
Of course, I'm gonna put that on. So it should be the screen. There you go.
Cool. Okay. So what are we gonna?
Right. So what we're gonna do today is have we're going to use one of the. So I've got a specific sort of workshops website documentation site that I call the Labs, which is at labs.composex.io, and basically one of the most the favorite articles I have on there is one about Traffic. So Traffic is a Traffic Proxy is an open source project that is going to be like a super kind of HTTP or TCP router where you can define rules and that sort of things. And one of the reasons why I geared towards Traffic when I discovered it was that there's a built-in ECS service discovery, which is one of the other things that we'll be able to sort of showcase in the demo, which I think is really cool. So I'll literally just be walking people through basically for the blog post during the deployment in the demo, which will show that I have a .compose file. I can have extension files on my local machine to do all my tests, make sure that all my routing for traffic is working and all of that sort of things. And I can just create an extension file specifically for AWS where I'm going to create a load balancer and all the load balancer certificates and all of those different resources. And ComposeX is going to basically come on top of all of that and deploy everything into my AWS account.
Oh,
okay,
well, let's check it out.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
cool. Right. So so this is the main page for ComposeX, the project, because one of the things to mention just before we jump right into the demo, ECS ComposeX was the first project of this, and then as time evolved, I needed to do more things than just deploying containers with CloudFormation. And so I started to create a series of other tools and projects around containers again, which are all listed in there. So if there's anything of interest to anybody, feel free to jump on that. But all right, let's jump into the demo. So again, like I said, there is this website that I call the Labs, the ComposeX Labs, where there is an article specifically about traffic. And literally, what you'll see.
So, John, do you recommend people go here if they want to learn more about it and actually sort of get hands-on? Is this Labs link where you would recommend people to go start off their journey with ComposeX?
Yeah, it's probably I think it's probably the best place. I probably need to add because I think a lot of the use cases I've used over the last few years to document all of that was a mix between some requirements I had for myself as well as requirements I had to implement new features. And I just documented them as they go. So typically there's a WordPress example, but I think that, probably even that example is a little old by now. And I probably need to put more simpler examples, but I thought that Traffic fits the bill very well because it's extremely cheap it's very simple.
Yeah. It's
very cheap as well. If you're running it on your account, you might be paying maybe a couple dollars tops to run a demo. And it's probably, the best place to start. And all that you see in the Labs is literally everything that is in the Git repository. So whether you're looking at the Labs from the website or if you're going to the Git repository for it, everything is exactly the same. The documentation and everything that you see here is rendered straight away from the Git repository.
Okay.
Nice.
Cool. So this is the blog post. We're not going to go through all of that because there's a TLDR. I can deploy traffic with ECS. That's pretty much it.
We love TLDRs.
Yes, but roughly this is what we're gonna get going, right? So we're going to do something very simple where we're going to deploy all of this infrastructure from simply running one command, and that means we're going to be deploying the VPC, the network load balancer, traffic, and another service behind traffic again to be able to showcase that service discovery. And then that's it. We'll be able to move on.
Sounds good.
Great. So let's jump to the Git repository. So literally, again, if you're on the site, well, it's gone. Of course, it's gone.
If anybody's just joined us, jumped in, we are going through ECS ComposeX with its creator, John Preston Mille. Any questions for John about ECS ComposeX? Or anything in particular, just let us know in the chat and we'll love to respond. Sorry, John, back to it.
Thanks a lot, Derek. So I literally, like I said, I went to the GitHub repository where you've got the README again if you want to go through all of that. And so what I've done is obviously got a clone on my machine. So I'm going to switch in a minute into the terminal to go through the install. But just before we do that, I mean, again, in the repository itself, there's the instructions on how to install ComposeX. But otherwise, if you want to have the fully fledged documentations on ComposeX itself, there is a specific documentation site for ComposeX, which is docs.composex.io, where you have literally everything that you can think about. There is even, for the curious ones, there's a little a section about the story of ComposeX and how I created it and why I make some specific technical choices and all of that, and all of the different features and AWS resources that are supported in the project.
Nice. Like that.
Cool. Right. So I'm going to switch to the terminal. So transition wizard, Derek, please. I'll be
transition wizard. Sorry, I was chatting.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So,
summon Derek's screen switching skills.
And
right.
Yay.
So hopefully this is
beautiful.
This is big enough. Right.
Great. Oh, that is a thing of beauty.
Right. So literally, if you're a user and you just cloned the repository of the labs onto your machine, and you go into the part number 1 of traffic, these are the files that you'll find. And obviously, the whole point is you'll be able to tweak those files to match to your own AWS account, because obviously you don't have the same domains that I do in all of those things. But that's besides the point. So just to show the demo, so let's have a look first at the.
Before you start off, so what you've done so far, okay? All you've done is you've installed ECS Docker Compose X using that command you showed in the documentation.
I haven't done that yet. I haven't done it yet. Any of that yet.
Right.
I literally.
Okay.
Yeah, we're literally at the very beginning of things. So
good stuff.
No, but that's a good shout. That's a good shout, because I probably would try to run the command, it wouldn't work. So it's absolutely a good shout. Right. So we've got the main Docker Compose file, which is where you go to pretty much any vendor these days, and they'll probably give you a Docker Compose file with the very bare minimum to get you started. And this is really where I wanted to be able to people to go is go to a vendor's website, find the basic files and Compose files that they have, and just run with it and be able to take all of this and just deploy.
Yeah.
So
totally get it, John. I've been there. I've been exactly in that situation, right? Where how do I get this into AWS? So I'm with you 100% here.
Yeah. So typically, this is a very basic Compose file, and one of my favorite features with Compose, and it's true for Compose version 1 and Compose version 2, is that you have the ability to use what you call extension files. So you have the main Docker Compose file, which can be very cumbersome. But if you want to create a specific environment-specific files, like for your production environment or your non-prod environment, you can just create the file, make some changes into it, and that allows you to move very easily with different environment variables and so on. So I heavily rely on the ability to have multiple files put together into one Compose file, basically to be able to switch between environments. So this is the main Compose file, and then there's another one. The local YAML. So in a nutshell, there's a great difference between the two, but this is the file that I then use to do all of the testing locally to make sure that this is working, I have the routing right, the discovery is working, and so on and so on. So I'm gonna start the Docker Compose now, and we'll be able to see basically what this is going to do. And our objective today is to be able to run the exact same command as what I'm going to do in a second, and do the same thing on the AWS once it's been deployed, and see that it works. Okay. So if I do a curl on localhost, the answer that we get comes from that simple service container, where what happened is our request went to traffic. Traffic realized that I'm making a request for localhost. Traffic understands it needs to send the request onwards to the simple service service, does the routing for you, and you get an answer. So that's that very much.
Yep.
Great. So to install it, my favorite method that I recommend people to use is to create a virtual environment if you're using Python.
Yeah.
That will allow you not to trash your entire Python setup, which can be
the joys of
which
Python.
it can lead to issues and problems. So after that, all you have to do is run 2 commands. So I like to update pip first. It's I don't know. It's a thing that I do.
You have a habit.
Yeah, it's a habit.
Yeah. npm and pip the same thing. Always update before you do anything.
Yeah,
and pray.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cross everything you've got. Cross your lightsabers. Don't cross the streams.
Right.
Like it.
Cool. So again, in this file, what we have is we're going to use the Docker Compose file that we had, and then there's an extension file called aws.yaml, which is basically taking pretty much everything that we had before, where we have only a very few things that change. So for example, typically here we've got X-Ray that is saying, hey, can you please add the X-Ray sidecar for me? Thank you very much. Add some IAM policies, because obviously one of the big driver of ComposeX is if you are going to use AWS resources like DynamoDB and whatever, you will be able to define what kind of access you want to give to those resources. And ECS ComposeX is going to give you the least privileged permissions on that resource and nothing else. But you can, when you need to, add extra networking rules. IAM policies. So just so you're trying to do some troubleshooting, you don't really know what's happening. You can, as a break glass kind of process, add IAM permissions. Networking. So here we're just saying, hey, we're going to allow traffic coming from anywhere. So for the purpose of the demo. And then again, same thing. So we've got the Who Am I service, which is our simple service that we had before. We are just changing here the role in the routing and say, I want you to reply, but not when obviously I'm calling localhost, but traffic that composes the IO. And then other settings, such as my ECS cluster. So here, I don't have the ECS cluster that exists, so it's going to create it for me. And when it does create it for me, I'm going to give it a name. It's going to have and I'm going to say, I want you to go on FileGet spot first, and then maybe on FileGet for the rest. DNS, obviously, a major thing to do. So the public zone already exists. What this is all going to do is going to look up all of the resources in my account and automatically get the zone ID, all of the details that I need to actually have permission to do all the things, and associate the resources with other resources. So typically, there's already an SCM a certificate on my account, because I use this demo very often, so I don't create the certificate every day. And what you can do later on is typically when you create a load balancer, you can say, hey, I want you to use the DNS the route 53 zone that I gave you before. And for the certificate, I want you to map it to this certificate. So you can do logic binding between different resources in the Compose file. So you don't have to worry about knowing how to write CloudFormation template at this point. You just say, I want you to logically link those different resources together, and it automatically is going to use the right attributes to do that.
Very nice.
Right. Got you.
Let's go to the demo now, because that's what I want to do.
This is fingers crossed. The demo gods.
So we've got ECS.
Everything's lucky because it's St. Patrick's Day. Go.
Exactly.
Exactly.
To be sure.
It's fine.
So ECS ComposeX, you run the command. So there's more than one command that you can run. So once you've installed it, if you've never used AWS before or ECS before, the first command to use is init. It's going to set up your account. If you don't want to have ECS ComposeX set up the account, again, there is in the documentation all of the basic requirements that is going to allow your account to use EC2 and VLAN tagging, for example, FileGet properly, and all of that stuff. So I just really recommend just people to run init. The only thing it does is setting ECS properties on your account and create a bucket for all the CloudFormation templates to be stored into. If you want to use a different bucket, there's an option for that, and you just say I want to use another CloudFormation bucket.
Yep.
Right. So ECS ComposeX, I'm going to use render, which is the command that is going to run everything sort of locally, and it's going to validate that all of my files and all the configuration and all of that stuff is correct before I go and do a deployment. So then what you do is you say -p or -n for the name of the stack. So here I'm going to do traffic demo. And then the Docker Compose files that you want. So we want the main Docker Compose file. Again, this is the one that defines all the things, all the minimums. And then I'm going to have the aws.yaml override file. And just for this demo, I'm going to also use the another file, which is the Prometheus to CloudWatch, which is another feature, something I just would showcase here, to deploy it. So if you do the render, you're gonna get an output that doesn't look very sexy. I didn't really put any time into
no ASCII art.
No ASCII art, no colors, not even colors at this point. But
but John, you could actually raise a feature request to add some fancy ASCII rendering on there.
Yeah.
Right. So
this is like a dry run, effectively. This is like doing a dry run, so that you're just basically checking it.
Yeah, it is a dry run. The only thing that it does in the dry run that uses the AWS API is use the CloudFormation validate template API, so that if there's any problem in the rendering, it's going to pick it up straight away, and you don't end up with a failed deployment. So I'm gonna deploy it. It's gonna take about 5 to 10 minutes to do the whole deployment, and then I can walk through some of the details of the template itself, and go through that. So the only thing I have to do now is literally change from render to up, and that's it. Then I'm going to switch again. So we're going to have a look at some of the features that ComposeX does strictly with the files, and before we switch to the console. So what's it with this output here? Just tell us what is done. So we know with the render it did a dry run. Okay, when you did it up, what's ComposeX doing in the background? Yeah, so the only difference is that it's going to render the templates, because what happens is it uses nested stacks. So you're going to have your main stack with all of the other stacks, the IAM stack, and the reason why everything is split this way is to allow people to reuse everything separately. Typically at some point I thought maybe I'll do a thing with Kubernetes with this project, and one of the things I wanted to be able to do was to keep the skeleton where all of the IAM roles, all of the policies, and all of that still gets generated, and then later on you can deal with Kubernetes and do the mapping in RBAC and move from there. So that's one of the things. But the only real difference between render and up is it's going to upload all the templates into the bucket, and invoke AWS CloudFormation create stack. That's really the only difference. So you also get the templates locally. So one of the things I've used CloudFormation for many years now, and one of my favorite thing with CloudFormation is that if you write a template properly, you'll be able to reuse it in any account and any region. And that's really, it's one of the things that you, as a cloud engineer, this is really one of the things you want to do, to be able to reuse and not duplicate work over time. So typically, if you look at the VPC template, this is a template you can reuse anywhere, and it will re-render your template. The only thing at this point, typically with VPC that is complicated, is that you need to hardcode. The only thing hardcoded in this template are the subnets CIDRs. But typically, if you use the XVPC module, you can change the default CIDR to whatever CIDR you want to use. If you have an existing VPC, you just do a lookup where you say, I want you to find my VPC based on those tags, my subnets based on those tags, and it will automatically do the deployment of ECS and all of that stuff into the VPC that already exists.
So John, do you see this like is this like a kind of a community type thing? So whereby if people use ECS ComposeX, they can create their own templates and share them in the project. Is that sort of how you could do this, right? Or do you have plans to create like a separate kind of repo which contains all shared templates from people?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I never really thought about it this way. I think that most of the time, the best things that happen throughout the life of the projects is people coming to Slack or opening issues on GitHub and being say, hey, here's my use case. Can you help me out with? I'd really like to do this. And what I do, and I'm going to switch screen present to another one. We're going to go onto the console now.
Keeping me on my toes today, John.
Yes, indeed. He's on top of it.
Come on, Derek. Come on.
And you're talking to a man in a silly Irish hat.
Exactly.
We challenge you.
Yeah, I think one of the best thing for people today is I've got so over the years I created issues for myself, mostly to basically say, hey, I would like to do this thing. Don't forget that you thought about doing this idea and document it and put it. So you'll see some of these issues and ideas go all the way back to basically when the project was created back in 2020. But some of those, but I had to prioritize, and some of those features typically. I've created a special tag in ComposeX where it's banning a use case. So if somebody if somebody is interested by doing something and that doesn't exist, they can raise a new feature request, but simply by opening a new issue. Or if the issue already exists, they can basically just comment into it. I'll get notified that there is an update on the issues and be able to crack on and work on it. And to make sure that every person that comes to me and has use cases they want to make sure that are tested with, some of those, not all of them wanted to have them part of the main repository, but there is a specific folder in the whole testing of ComposeX before I release a new version where I have the community use cases that get tested. So that way I know that those community users that have used the project before are not going to end up with something that is going to lead to incompatibilities in the future.
Right.
Love it.
Nice.
Love that.
That's really good. Cool.
Right. Let's have a look at what's happening. So there we go. That's our main stack. I'm going to have to find a way to split this in an intelligent way because I had to zoom quite a bit. But as you can see, I don't really know how to. Oh, there you go. There we go. So as you can see, this is our main stack. It's created already our VPC stack. So again, if you only wanted to deploy the VPC, you take the VPC template and deploy it, and that's it. We move on. The IAM stack, which has our IAM role, some policies, and all of that sort of things. So here it's going to be deploying into Fargate. So it's created a task role and an execution role to give Fargate permissions to deploy all the things that you need to do. Cloud Map. So Cloud Map, again, if you're not familiar with it, it's a service discovery service. There's now an ECS Connect, which is somewhat similar to this. It does things in slightly different ways, but it still uses Cloud Map. And Cloud Map is, again, some service discovery that is going to create DNS records, put attributes to your services so that you can perform client-side service discovery, which can be extremely useful. And at the moment, it's still dealing with.
It's done it. It's done it.
Oh, hey! See?
So it's created our network load balancer. So this is a public. We put it in the public. So it's created, elastic IP addresses. It's created our target groups, listeners, all of that, and it would have typically put all of the rules and configuration into the load balancer. So there we go. If I go to the load balancer,
let's see it.
There it is. It's hidden behind the giant screen. We can see that here are our two listeners. So typically, very often you'd have HTTP redirect to HTTPS. So there's the listener for that here, and then there's this listener here for HTTPS. Now again, here we're using a network load balancer and an application load balancer because traffic is going to be doing the logic. So we're literally just giving bytes and stuff to traffic, and it's going to deal with it. And as you can see here, it automatically did the mapping that I mentioned before, linking the certificate that already exists in my account and assign it to that listener specifically, and move on with that. Right. Cool.
So we got a couple of minutes. So how do you think we're gonna see the end of this?
We should see the end of this. It's creating the traffic service right now, which it's almost finishing.
So while we're waiting for this to deploy, should we ask John our weekly question?
I think we should, John.
So
we ask all our guests. Okay, this very, very important question. Okay, so you walk into your favorite pizza joint. Okay, and you go in, and someone says, "We've got a special." Okay, ham pizza. Do you take the pineapple option, or do you not take the pineapple option? Look at these fine selection of people here. And we've got you here at the bottom. So the question is, what side of the fence? And for people on the chat, what do you do? So John, tell us, where do you stand?
I'm definitely not putting pineapple on my
What?
on my pizza. Nope.
What?
No, it's a 2 for John.
Oh, John.
Nope.
John,
Sorry.
we were doing so well. We were doing so well.
The only place I put pineapple is in a pina colada or for sweet and sour sauce. That's it.
Oh, that's a good choice.
That's hilarious, John, because you're not the only person who's come on and said only pina coladas.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there may be a correlation between open source maintainers and pina coladas. That's what I'm thinking at the minute.
Yep. Isn't there a who sings? Is it that song? What's the chap?
Don't.
Barry Manilow. Is it Barry?
Oh no! Yeah, I know the song that you mean, and no, please don't sing that.
I won't. Trust me, I can't sing, and I would never wish that on anyone.
Nice. And so in the chat we've got no is winning. So no, no's won the pineapple in pina colada debate, pineapple pizza debate today. Okay, all right. So that's that over.
Right. It's almost
I think it is over now. John, you're off.
Right. So actually, demo effect. But actually on purpose, almost on purpose. The WooMI service is not fully ready yet, so traffic hasn't found it, and it's telling us I haven't found it. Literally, it's literally finishing. So hopefully, right before you cut me off, this will tell me, I'm done.
It's one of those things you can never ever predict when it comes to, like, when I do demos and CDK. This is the bit when I'm at an event and I think, this takes 5 minutes, and of course it doesn't. It always takes longer when you're actually in front of an audience, right? So John, while we're waiting for this to finish, okay, let's ask a question, okay, about the project. So you've been doing ECS ComposeX for coming up to the 3rd anniversary, right? With all the hindsight, okay, of having 3 years doing it, what's the one thing do you think that you would have loved to have known before you started that you know now, right? So if you could go back in time, what would you have loved to have known and maybe changed?
Well, so I think one of my mistakes very early on that I didn't realize was that ECS ComposeX, or if you don't put a dash between the E and the X, reads for sex, which is something that a lot of things are going to kick you out for. And
my God,
yes, the ECR public ECR, when I made the request the first time for getting my alias, was rejected because of that.
Wow.
So,
wow,
that's hilarious.
Gosh, that is just bonkers.
Yeah. So there was that. There was that, and then obviously this is something that then obviously applies to the repository. So after that, every single other project that would be ComposeX, I made sure to put a space in between, put something in between the E and the X, not to read that.
Well, it's a lesson learned. It's a lesson learned for everyone. So before we switch. Exactly. Before we switch back to see if the demo's finished, right? A couple of things to be aware of. First of all, coming up next show in 2 weeks' time, we have great show lined up with Sirav to talk about an open source project which I hadn't heard of before, Gisto, which is just a headless e-commerce site on PHP. So it'll be really, really cool to dive through the code, look at how you get started if you want to do your own open source e-commerce site. So going to really look forward to that. So that's in 2 weeks' time, our next show. So make sure you tune in for that. And of course, as always, please, we thrive on feedback. Let us know what projects you want. Let us know how we can improve how AWS supports open source. Do this link or QR code, whichever you prefer. I promise there's no pineapple in the questions this time.
Not even a pina colada.
Yeah. Not even a pina colada. So please, if you have like literally 30 seconds, complete that link. Please. So I think can we go back to John and see if the demo's finished?
It's done. It's all up.
Whoa! It worked.
Yeah,
fantastic. So we can see the different remote IP addresses and.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is all typically the IP address of the container itself, where it comes from, what the host was, all that. So very simple demo, very simple use case. But it as it turns out, it is the most popular blog post I have published.
Awesome.
So
great. So John, before we go, we've got literally 30 seconds. What would you love to share with the people listening and watching maybe on the replay? What's your call to action? How can people get started with the ECS Compose X? What do you need help with? Tell us more.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I think that the most useful thing today, obviously any code contribution is welcome, but I think the most useful thing for me is to have use cases and people who are going to do things that I haven't been trying to do for the last 3 years to show something, to have something a little different.
Awesome, great stuff.
Fantastic.
I think with that we're on time. So thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you,
and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next episode.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day. Thanks, John.
And have a great St. Patrick's Day.
Bye. Oh, I know I stuffed it up. Oh my goodness.